First off, I want to say a little apology to Taylor Fritz. While you know, if you've watched this show for any amount of time in the last couple of years, we usually like to make fun of Taylor Fritz here. The guy deserves more respect. And as you can see, a comment from my last video, the title was disrespectful. Now, I meant it towards American players en general, but of course, it could be seen as directed straight at Fritz and Tiafoe, who we've made fun of plenty over the years, but the guys do deserve a little better than that. And as the comment points out, and I agree, Fritz has a puncher's chance in the final tomorrow. After all, take a look at the Vivo RN Productions poll. This is over 32,000 people who responded to this. Taylor Fritz, the only person with a double-digit chance, 11%. Pretty far short of Yannick Sinner's 79%, but pretty far ahead of Tiafoe and Draper. Mrs. Cat and Mr. Mateo have left the building, by the way. Mr. Mateo, friend of Mrs. Cat. Anyways, moving on from there, let's take a look. Whatever disrespect I might have given to Taylor Fritz, I don't think it comes close to this level.
It's tough. It's really, really tough. Really, really tough to swallow. This one's going to hurt really, really bad. I mean, I thought I was a better player for sure tonight.
Now, you see that comment there. I like that comment. Can't be the better player for sure tonight if you end up losing. Come on now. Come on, man. Kind of like Johnny Mac maybe said that. I don't know. But let's give Tiafoe the benefit of the doubt there. Let's let him, let's not take him out of context. Let's give him the whole response. Here's where he continues.
I think, but then in the fourth, just out of nowhere, just had like some in and out cramps. Like it felt, like my body, kind of just shut down on me. I don't know, like probably had a lot to do with nerves. I wasn't tired at all. Just
wasn't tired.
About to get into the final. I've probably the closest I was. Obviously, when I played Alcaraz, I was kind of hanging for dear life to go 5. Here I was really in a position to win, and probably with the year I had, and was almost able to be in that position. I've been feeling unbelievable physically, but also, it could be a testament to how many matches I've played in a short time, and I haven't played that many matches.
It's a lot of excuses. No credit to the opponent yet.
But ultimately. I think nerves got the better of me tonight, and kind of just went down. It's kind of like a similar thing with Alcaraz and Novak that year. The French, it kind of seems like the same thing. Just couldn't really move, and but you got to tip your hat to Taylor. He stayed with it.
There we go.
Competed, and
all right,
he deserved it tonight. So
about a minute and a half into the response, he finally does tip his cap to Taylor Fritz. So I don't think my disrespect leveled on that, but they're friends. I'm sure Taylor Fritz would understand, and it is a painful moment. But he even goes as far to compare himself to Alcaraz and Djokovic, comparing I guess their match to that a little bit inadvertently. He does that before he even tips his cap. So let's just call it even. Americans disrespecting Americans. It's all fair game here in les États-Unis. Taylor Fritz, I think, does have a chance tomorrow, a puncher's chance, maybe a little bit more than a puncher's chance, because we know Sinner, he had the wrist thing, right? Fell over in the middle of the match with Draper. Maybe that can come back. He says it's okay now, but you never really know until the next day how it feels. And I guarantee you, if it's a problem today, Yannick Sinner and his team are not going to be telling us about it. So there is that. That gives Fritz a little bit more of a chance. And then there's also the attitude. And I like Fritz's attitude going to this match. I'm becoming more and more of a Taylor Fritz fan. Not the more I watch his matches, but the more I listen to him in press. He's no Danny Medvedev, but he gives good interviews. He's very honest, and he breaks down tennis very well. Let's take a listen to why he actually likes his chances to win the U.S. Open and break the drought, the first American to win a major tournament in over 20 years, if he can do it tomorrow.
It's two Americans to make it to the final. Both of us.
Excuse me, let me start
be the
that
guy
over.
To make it to
I didn't set he will go on to explain why he likes his chances against Sinner, what he thinks. But he also says he's being asked here, Taylor, because he'd already said before in the press conference that there's no way he's going to feel the kind of pressure. There's no more crazy of a situation than when he already went through in the semifinal with Tiafoe. It'll actually be like a less pressure match. in the final, and he also said that he likes playing against Sinner. He thinks he matches up well against him. And then a guy said, "Can you explain more?" One of the media guys said, "Taylor, could you explain a little bit more about what you said earlier? Give us more details." So first, he's going to talk about why it'll be less pressure for him in the final than it was in the semi.
I mean, it's two Americans to make it to the final. Both of us want to be the guy to make it to the final. I had a 6-1 head-to-head leading into it, so it's like, and I'm not thinking that I'm not going into this thinking that I'm the favorite, because everything's totally different when you're playing a match like this. He's been playing unbelievable all US Open. He's been playing in the night match slot on Ash every single match. Like, I'm not thinking I'm the favorite, but it's tough to go in as like the record 6-1. This is to make a US Open final. Whoever wins it is the American that made it to the final. It's a stressful situation to be in. It's different from playing the world number one, who you're probably not going to be the favorite against. But I think I've always played well against Yannick. I think we're 1-1. It's been a while since we played, but last time he got me in 3 at Indian Wells, and I don't know. He strikes. He hits the ball big. He's like a very strong ball striker, but I feel like I always hit the ball really, really nice off of his ball, and I don't know. I think I typically play well against him.
Well, he's going to have to play very well against him if he's going to break the drought and be the first American to win a major in over 20 years tomorrow. Welcome to Coffee Break Tennis. I am your humble host, Matt Bradshaw, lover of the game and expert of the game as well. Throw a comment up on the screen. I'm not the only person who's been hating on American players who is an American for a long time, actually. You know, we've kind of been conditioned here in this country to expect the worst from our top players. Anyways, here's a comment from some of his press conference videos on YouTube. I seriously doubt Fritz will win against Sinner, but he deserves way more respect from the American tennis fans and public in general, which is maybe true. You know, he's earned a lot of respect, I think, just by making this final. From Bublik, it looks like it says, people severely underrate Fritz. He's on course for 3 straight years finishing in the top 10, which is pretty incredible. You know, the last person to do that would probably be Andy Roddick, I would say. One last comment about comments and about predictions on the screen while I was commenting on comments in the last video. Put this one on the screen. People put too much consideration to predictions, from Lucian86, one way or another. It doesn't make you special or bad in any way. FYI, I can beat 90% of you on a long-term prediction game by just looking at the odds. I will point out here that the odds in Vegas were highly in favor of both Zverev and Dimitrov to win those matches. So my prediction was right along with the odds and still wrong. Anyways, it's just a fun and interesting way to look at tennis. You analyze players, you say the reasons why you think they'll win or lose. You learn du merde and hope for the best. Not even the players themselves can tell how their match is going to be, and they have so much inside information, at least from their side. Yeah, that's true, and that's also why they're not allowed to bet on the sports. The sports gambling is, they're not allowed to do that when they're actually playing the matches. You know, because they know more, I guess. Or maybe because they could throw the match. Maybe it's more to do with that. Anyways, thought those comments were interesting. And yes, Taylor Fritz probably does deserve more respect. With that said, I don't think he's going to win tomorrow, but I do give him a chance. He needs a few things to happen. One, with Tiafoe, we saw as the match went on and on, he says in his press that it wasn't that humid, but during the Sinner and Draper match, earlier in the day when the humidity is usually lower, they said it was 73% humidity is what I heard during the broadcast. And they were saying how Draper was he's a big sweater anyways, but he was sweating a lot. And Sinner was as well because of the extra humidity. And he was having to switch rackets just to get a fresher grip. It sounds like it was pretty humid to me. So I don't know what Tiafoe is talking about there. I think it was pretty humid, and the cramping was probably less to do with nerves and more to do with the fact he's a heavy sweater, kind of like me or Rafa, Pete Sampras. Some people just sweat more than others. Tiafoe is one of those people, but I think the humidity was high enough to make him sweat a lot. That's probably why he was cramping. Anyway, so Fritz is going to need to go 5 sets and hope Sinner, either the wrist is hurting or all the sweating and the humidity. It's a 2 o'clock match, so maybe, I think it's 2 o'clock. I believe it starts at 2 o'clock tomorrow, either 2 or 4. It needs to be pretty humid, and Sinner needs to start cramping in the legs, which we've seen him do in the past. I do think Fritz has the serve, the forehand, the weapons, and his movement is getting better. Early days, I always used to talk about how he's great, but his movement's not good enough, and he doesn't, serve like John Isner, even though he has a great serve. So without the movement, how is he going to be a top player? Well, he proved me wrong, and he got to be a much better mover. So that's a big factor there. I think he has the weapons to where he could push Sinner to 5 sets and maybe wear him out. It is possible, but let's take a look at their history here in the head-to-head. This is a lot of ifs, ands, or buts for him to be able to win this thing. Of course, they're 1-1. They've only played in Indian Wells, which is, I think, a better. I look at Alcaraz. He always beats Sinner there. Then they go to Miami, and Sinner typically beats Alcaraz in Miami. So that court, and this court plays more like Miami than it plays like Indian Wells. That court is, more favorable for Sinner for sure. We can all agree on that. And Fritz says he likes playing with Sinner. He likes the way his ball comes in, which is true. A lot of players, they like pace. A lot of players like that. People who aren't pros like that. And Sinner gives you a lot of pace. The problem is, it's hard to use it against him because the guy moves so well and covers the court like Djokovic. The ball sits up higher in Indian Wells, so it's good for a tall guy like Fritz, who is a little bit taller than Sinner. Also, on top of that, he's from there, so he's a little bit of a home favorite. Fritz is from California. So now they're playing somewhere that plays more like Miami. It's a faster court. It shouldn't be as high bouncing. So that's going to change things. Taylor Fritz, we'll see how that plays out, if that's going to hurt him or if it won't be a big deal because a hard court's a hard court. As Medvedev said, this is not hard court about Indian Wells, right? It's a secret clay court. So there is that. You can move on it like a hard court, but the ball plays off of it more like a clay court is what Medvedev was saying there. So there is that factor. Of course, they've only played at Indian Wells, and one time was when Sinner, a few years ago, 3.5 years ago about, Sinner was a teenager then, and Taylor Fritz was the age Sinner is today back then. So we kind of throw that one out. But last year's match, we can definitely look at some of the highlights from that match and talk about those. But before we do that, just look at a few more numbers here. Sinner is getting these like a GOAT numbers, right? How many matches did it take you to win 60 in the Grand Slams at the Grand Slams? Well, out of Sinner's 78 first matches at the Grand Slam level, he wins 60 and loses 18. Exactly the same as Djokovic, almost exactly the same as Rafa, who's a little bit better. The only person better than those three is Alcaraz. Another GOAT-like number that we're seeing from Sinner already. He's done so well this year, the most points ever by one player. Sinner is now on the list just behind Agassi, Medvedev, Sampras, Murray, Nadal, Federer, Djokovic. And if Sinner wins the U.S. Open, he's gonna jump over Agassi and Medvedev, I think. I'm pretty sure, right? Because he had 2 majors and a lot of other wins in the same year. So, yeah, looking very good for Sinner there. A couple things that are bad on the side of Fritz is look at this one. Imagine in 2018 predicting that the next gen of Medvedev, Zverev, and Tsitsipas would have one Grand Slam between them 6 years later. That's pretty amazing. Taylor Fritz is from that generation. He might be slightly younger than those guys, but I think he's 27, about to turn 28, or he's 26, about to turn 27. He's around there. So he's about the same age, and he is from that lost generation of players for sure. One last thing, this doesn't necessarily pertain to this match, in fact, because Draper's a lefty. Fritz does have a good slice serve. He's got a great serve in general. He can do everything with it. Sinner's average second serve return hit points. Look how close he is taking the second serve, and you'll see in the highlights from Indian Wells last year that he's doing this to Fritz a lot in the ad court. It's backwards here. So yellow would be in the ad court because Draper is a lefty. The lefty swing cuts out so far that if you're way back, it's going to hurt you a lot and be hard to make a return at all. So, and the ad side is the blue, And Sinner is really close to take that lefty swing serve very early before it has time to spin away from him and get out of hand. And then on the deuce court, he would back way up because it doesn't really matter. The lefty swing is not going to do as much to hurt you. It's just going to bring you more into the middle of the court. So that gave him time since Draper's serve is so big. So it'll be interesting to see where Sinner stands with Fritz. But take a look. Here is ad court on a second serve from Indian Wells last year. And Sinner is taking it very early. I guess probably because he didn't want, US Open is going to bounce lower and take the slice better. So maybe, it's moving away more. And so he's not going to back up on that one. He's going to take it in close. Whereas this should be the side where he backed up a lot against Draper because it's flipped, right? So this is the side where you think maybe he would back up, but it's going to jump so high when you hit a kick serve, it's better to move in really close. And he's thinking Fritz is way more likely to hit a kick out wide here than a slice serve. Anyways, and plus it's the side that a righty doesn't swing as much. Very early, hugging the baseline. Fritz is right on the baseline too, and they're going to go backhand to backhand for a while. And Sinner is going to slowly kind of push Fritz back a little bit. You can see Sinner's not giving up any position. Then he gets the chance to really go after it and finish right there.
And he does break.
And I think we're going to see a lot of that.
He's really going to take this match to Taylor
Also,
Fritz.
should point out, those are the guys with the doping cream, by the way. Here's Fritz taking a serve return very early. And he gets Sinner in a little trouble. Sinner knows he's out of position, so he just goes to finish it. That's the kind of game that Sinner has. Fritz can do that too, but Sinner is definitely a little better at it if he just wants to crush the ball and finish a point out of nowhere. Here's a little more for you. Taking it very early again. Again, this is a high-bouncing court, so I'm guessing Sinner was taking the second serve super early from Fritz because he doesn't want it to kick up high. And again, you see the heavy firepower, it's kind of like watching Zverev a little bit. Fritz and Zverev do have a lot in common, you could say. At least Fritz does seem to have more urgency to want to get up on the baseline and dictate than you see in a Zverev match. But
what a combination.
I don't see how Fritz is going to be able to get the better of him in the rallies, even though he likes hitting the ball with him. And it's going to be interesting to see how this court versus that court changes things. Unloads on that backhand and takes control of the point. Let's play a couple clips of these guys talking, and then we will get out of here. Okay, I'm back a few hours later. Had to go teach a group tennis lesson, and I just watched those clips that you just saw. I watched them again. Around that time, I realized I was out of time and had to stop the show and finish it later. Anyways, I just watched the clips, and just to summarize real quick on that, you can see all the X factors are going to go the way of Sinner. Like I showed in the last video. Yeah, the last video I did. I showed the metrics that they rank with the ATP's stats for the US Open, and it showed Sinner way ahead in forehand, backhand, close to the top in serve. I think number 2 in return, right behind Medvedev. So, I mean, he really does have everything. And Taylor Fritz, I would like to look back at those. Maybe we will after the final's over when we come back. But, he had good numbers there, but not close to the top on every single metric like Sinner is. And you can see it play out in those points. They're having some great rallies. They're both hitting the ball really hard, but it's always Sinner who's gaining more and more ground, holding control closer to the baseline. Sinner who's getting in more quality returns. Say what you will about Fritz having a better serve than Sinner. I think Sinner's return is going to get him into more Fritz serve games than Fritz's return is going to against Sinner's serve in his service games, even if the Sinner serve is not as good as Fritz. And then the last thing I was showing was kind of talking about like intangibles, cat and mouse style points, points where, you get out of jail, like they were saying basically in that clip. That's Sinner's going to get more of those too. So if you look at like every part of the game, who gets the advantage, you pretty much check the advantage to Sinner in every single thing except for the serve, we will give Fritz the advantage on serve, and that's pretty much it. Anyways, gonna play this clip now. Sinner was asked what's his weakness after Draper said he doesn't have any weaknesses except maybe he's too nice of a guy. So listen to this clip. This is pretty good. Very honest assessment of his own game. Like, he actually goes into it and talks about his weaknesses. Normally you would think the player would kind of laugh off this question and move on. So take a listen to that.
You said that you were too nice. What do you think of that? And what do you think your greatest weakness is?
What my weakness?
He had to think about that for a little bit.
Yeah, going for sure on the net. You know, sometimes I miss some volleys. Shot selection sometimes is still. I feel like I can make it a little bit better. There are all some small things which they make the small details what makes a big difference in high level. And for sure, me and my team, we know what we have to improve. Like today, maybe I should have gone maybe a little bit more in the net sometimes, and you know, all this stuff. So, but yeah, it takes time. It's not like magic, no. You have to go through certain moments, and I lost matches, you know, by doing the right things, and then you have to keep working on that. And sometimes I won matches even doing the wrong things. So, you know, you always have to talk with your team and trying to find the right balance. And so yeah.
Also, you see, there was a comment at the end of that I wanted to read out, but a lot there. That was a kind of a long clip, but a lot of good stuff. Like, he takes a while to think about it. What is the weakness in my game? And then he says, you know, he should come to the net more. Like, they've worked so much on that since Darren Cahill came on board, and you can see how it was already a factor back then at Indian Wells, at least in that one play from the highlight reel. But, you know, he's coming in the net and looked pretty good there, the way he's finishing off. He's even better at it now. So he says, you know, he still can get better at net, coming into net more, you know, realizing, although he just did in, which match was it? I remember doing, it must have been when he beat Medvedev. I remember doing a video recently and pointing out in the stats how he was, I think in the first set, 100, was it the Medvedev match? I can't remember. It doesn't matter. He was 100% when he came into net. It might have been against Tommy Paul, actually. 100% of the time he came to the net in the first set, he won. And I was, you know, pointing out how he was really good about coming in when the time was right. When he sensed the moment, he was really good at it. He was really good at sensing the moment of coming in. He's saying he could get even better at that, and talking about shot selection. And then I love the comment he says after that, saying it's just small things like that make a big difference at the top level of the game, the very highest level where these guys, these top 10, let's say the top 10, it's the little things that can put you over the edge, and that's so true. You know, there was this thing people used to say a lot when I first started watching tennis. You've probably heard it. They still say it today, but they used to say it more often back then, and it was something like the distance from 100 to 10 in the world is about as big as the distance from 10 to 1, right? It's a huge gap. Number 10 is way better than number 100, and number 1 is way better than number 10. And I think that's still true, even though there's more depth in the game now today. But it is little things, because they're so good at everything, right? It's little things like what Yannick was talking about there that, you know, are so hard to do, can take you years and years. You know, it took most of the careers of Nadal and Djokovic to get good at all of those things. You know, by the end of their careers, by the last few years of their winning days, they're really good about coming into net, shot selection, knowing when the right time is to come into net, all those things. Anyway, so I like that. And then what was Sinner saying at the end? Oh, that, you know, sometimes you lose matches trying to play the right way, and then other times you're winning matches even though you're playing the wrong way. And that makes me think immediately of the story of Pete Sampras and Michael Chang, I think it was, in the juniors. And the story was that Chang would always beat Pete Sampras in the juniors when they played. And then, of course, Pete Sampras wins 14 majors, and Michael Chang only wins 1 and does it when he's a teenager. and is looking for success after that early success. Is trying to match that the rest of his career. It never does. And the story with them was always the things that Sampras was focusing on back in those junior years. And it's the reason why top juniors still to this day very frequently they don't come even close to what Michael Chang did. You know, they're busts pretty frequently. Guys who are number one in the world in the juniors don't always succeed really at all on tour. You know, at least Michael Chang did win a major, and after that still had a good, successful career. He just never won another major. But anyways, the point is Sampras, they said, was like kind of playing the right way and developing the game to be a guy that wins multiple majors. And, you know, it's hard. It's harder to play that way, and sometimes you lose even though you are growing and becoming a more complete player and learning how to use all the tools. Whereas Michael Chang, you know, they developed something that worked really well at the junior level and was pretty successful at the pro level as well, but not like what Pete Sampras developed. Another thing I think about is the early years of Roger Federer. We showed a stat earlier in this video saying, you know, how many matches it took to get to 60 Grand Slam wins, and Sinner's right there with Djokovic and Nadal, and then Alcaraz is even better. And you don't see Federer on that list because he did a lot of losing in his early years, even though he won plenty too and showed people that he was a talented player to be excited about. But there were so many aspects to his game. He was so good at so many things, and he didn't quite know how to put it all together and get the wins. Also, he had the anger problem. You know, he'd probably talk about that if you asked Fed why it took him so long to fully blossom. But that was definitely a factor as well. It took a while to figure out how to, since he was so good at everything from a young age, so talented, it took a while to figure out how to put it all together, you know, and basically shot selection. Anyways, moving on, thought that was very interesting. Good to hear from Sinner, and it's all true. I think he is only going to get better. We got some Taylor Fritz clips now.
Passing him at changeovers. Is there any, before he cracked there, and he had said his body was cramping, he was suffering from nerves. Did you sense anything in his body language, anything you're picking up that says this?
From
I think
Tiafoe.
There's something different here. I think he's wilting a little bit.
To be honest, no. He did an incredibly good job of not showing me, to be honest. We played that one extremely long rally, and I was trying my best to not show that I was pretty gassed after that point. For me, I feel like it's more like I'm gassed for like 30 seconds to like a minute. I feel like I'm like, I can't stand up. But then once I can go to the changeover, sit down and like relax for a minute, then I feel like I'm totally fine. But in that moment, when I went over the towel box, I like bent over. I didn't want to bend over. I had to. I looked over at him, and he didn't like go hands to knees or anything like that. So I was like, okay, I know I feel awful. Like he has to feel a little bit tired, but he did a good job of making me believe that I guess he wasn't feeling any worse than I was.
Really interesting stuff there as well. Like I said earlier in this show, I'm liking Fritz more and more. And, you know, it's fun to watch, like the last video I did, the clip of him and Zverev at Wimbledon just crushing the ball back and forth, going forehand to forehand. That's always fun to watch. I enjoy it. But, you know, Fritz is not my favorite player to watch for sure. And I'm liking him more and more. Listening to him in his press conferences, he's actually pretty good in the press conference. You know, you learn a little bit about behind the scenes at these top level matches, and that was definitely interesting. The way he's talking, you know, being honest about trying to hide the suffering he's going through, which I can relate to playing in league tennis here in Georgia. I understand what that's like, and that feeling of looking over and wondering if the other person is suffering as much as you are. It's definitely a big factor in a match, and it's part of the mental chess game that you're playing. Anyways, I thought that was interesting that he pointed out that Tiafoe was doing a better job of hiding it than him, but he knew, I'm feeling pretty miserable. There's no way Tiafoe's not feeling it a little bit. You know, he knew deep down, even though he didn't see a sign of it. And then he goes on to say there was one little thing he noticed, and this is pretty funny.
So I think the only thing that I thought was funny, or that I noticed very early on in the match, I hit like a really insane volley for me. And typically, if I were to do something like that, Francis would be like laughing. And I would look. He loves to like laugh when I hit a good volley because I mean my volleys aren't great, and he always like over exaggerates how bad it is. So I looked over him expecting him to be like smiling at me, and he was like dead serious. So I was like, okay, he's really serious. He's really locked into this one, because normally like he'd be like joking about something like that.
That's pretty funny. I guess that doesn't really go to a tell that Tiafoe is about to cramp and is falling apart. He said it was early in the match, but it was a thing he noticed that said Tiafoe is very locked in, very serious about winning this match. I mean, this shouldn't be a surprise, but funny story. You know, it's kind of like, and hit the music because I'm going to get out of here now. It's kind of like watching a TV show. You have your characters that you love, and then they, over years maybe, a long-running show, and then they introduce new characters, and maybe at first you don't like them so much, and after a while, eventually, they wear on you, and you surrender to the inevitable. Time must march on. There are going to be new players like Taylor Fritz. So I guess I like him. He's growing on me. I'm starting to like Taylor Fritz a little. Who do I think will win? Of course, I still think Jannik Sinner. I think he'll probably do it in 3 or 4 sets. But there is the chance that it's humid enough, the conditions can get to Sinner if Fritz can make him work. I said the same thing when Medvedev and Sinner played earlier this year at the Australian Open. You know, unfortunately for Medvedev, he was pretty worn out going into that match. He wasn't really, remember he played all those 5-set matches and got to the final at the Aussie Open, whereas Sinner was having easier wins. And he wasn't really in the shape to push him into a 5-setter and feel good enough to take advantage of however much that must have physically worn on Sinner. Now, I mean, he did just play a long, brutal match, but not as many long, brutal matches as Medvedev had. So Fritz, I would say, is going to be fresher than Medvedev at the Australian Open for sure. He definitely has the firepower and the weapons to where he could push the match very long and make it a physical battle. And I think that's his best chance, is wearing out Sinner. He said in his press conference that he thinks he's going to come out and play good. He thinks he's going to come out and play a good level of tennis. He's going to play well as soon as he comes out. He is the underdog. He's going to have a lot of crowd support. I believe him. I think he will play well. I won't be surprised if maybe he can sneak the first set, or at least take an early lead and make Sinner have to reset, regroup, which he definitely will do. No matter how long this goes, it's hard to not imagine Sinner finding a way to win just because of how good he has been all year, especially since we got on the hard courts, got through Wimbledon and the Olympics and all that. Since we got on to the U.S. hard court swing, Sinner has looked like the best player by far, not even close. So it's hard to predict him to lose this match. So I'm going to go with Sinner wins in 4 sets. It's always safe to say 4 sets. Sinner wins in 4 sets, but it's definitely not impossible. And Taylor Fritz at least has a puncher's chance. We'll be back after the final. See ya!